Today we are looking at how to refurbish the Roland SR-JV80 sound expansion cards. I have a session card here which is still not repaired, and I'll show you now how to do this. So this is the card from the bottom side up, and you can see here the capacitor. That is the part that creates problems. Roland has warned about these parts a while ago and has recommended that the cards be either replaced or serviced. I was talking to a Roland representative in Finland today, and he told me that Roland is actually fixing these. So although you don't find any mention of this anywhere, it's probably worth asking your country's Roland representative about some options how to fix these. But I will show you today how you can do it yourself. Please note there is also a very good video by Don Solaris. You will find the link below. And there's also a very good thread at Gearsluts. I will also add the link, and you can even see some pictures there about what it looks like if one of these capacitors blows up. As you can see, the soldering points here on the left and on the right of the card, they're really tiny. You can barely see them. And this is where we have to start desoldering the capacitor. So the best way is to do it like Don Solaris recommended, to grab it with pinchers and while desoldering to slowly wiggle it left and right. So let's try that. Now, one of the typical problems I'm facing here is that the solder joints are so old, you have a hard time getting it to loosen up. And with several cards I've had the problem that the traces of the board came off much more quickly than the actual soldering joints. So there is another option, but you have to be careful, and that is the plastic bottom here. This plastic part is not connected in any way to the capacitor. The plastic part is actually just added to the bottom. If you bend down the pins of these, it's perfectly possible to remove the plastic bottom. So one option is to remove the plastic part in order to have better access to the pins, to the legs, so the desoldering will be much easier. So this took a while of careful prying, and the advantage now is that we have really managed to get away the plastic part, and you can now see the pins. So now it's much easier to desolder. I could even cut the legs at the bottom, because they're now clearly visible. You can get in much more easily. So, after trying back and forth, I've come to the conclusion that these soldering joints are not going anywhere. Even with adding of solder, adding of flux, it's absolutely not going anywhere. So the only remaining option now is to actually cut them off close to the board. So if you have pliers that are very flat, you can basically go underneath and cut them off. It's something I wouldn't recommend, but the point is that I don't want to damage the board any more than I have done already. So here we've managed to cut it off with its legs in its entirety. And finally here we can now access the soldering joints with mini fluxer. So now we add some dabs of solder. This will make it easier to add the capacitor later. Now here is the new capacitor. So the easiest assembly way that I've found is to take away the bottom plastic and to put the legs slightly raised like this. So now with the capacitor, which has been cleaned with flux, and the solder dabs already in place, I will now heat up the solder dabs and then put the capacitor right on top. With these tactics, the capacitor is now in place, and quite sturdily so, if I may say. So it's actually not moving at all. Now of course this is not good enough for a surface mount component. It will not last if you knock it or something, so I will still put hot glue on it, but before we do that of course we need to check whether it works. So now we temporarily add the card back, making sure not to touch the new capacitor. The expansion card is in slot C, so I selected slot C here on the 3080, and we can actually already see the overdriven name in the display. Seems to be fine. And now we add some hot glue and fix this part into place. And of course we let it cool down for a while. And now we fix the card in place. And there we go. And now one more test. And that's it.